の香る風につらげそれ
マジか。俺
Mirai Nikki is an anime that has a lot of history with me. When I first watched it 2 years ago, I was just barely discovering anime. I've had the chance to rewatch it since, and alright, there's not much to it. Mirai Nikki is shit! To fully understand the extent of this absurdity, I first need to give a general synopsis, not of the plot itself, but rather a synopsis of what makes the anime so bad, starting with the first episode. In this batch of 26 horrendously directed episodes that managed to accomplish absolutely nothing, we have yandere number 754 and her love for Amano Yukito, a seemingly normal boy who goes to high school. Yukito, whom for the sake of the easiness of this review I will refer to as Amano, is a lonely high schooler who doesn't like going to school, and because he doesn't have any friends, he came up with an imaginary god to cope with all of this loneliness. This god, named Deus Ex Machina, challenges, or rather forces Amano into a giant battle royale against different people. Their only weapon, and respectively Amano's only weapon, is a diary, which is here represented as mobile phones, for the sake of simplicity I assume. Anyway, Amano is supposed to fight all these people, kill them, so that Deus can select him as his successor because Deus's powers are weakening and the world needs a new god before it's too late. There is so much wrong with this information I gave you alone, and not the information I gave you precisely, but the logic behind it. I seriously don't know where to start. Maybe with the first episode. This is the worst first episode I've ever seen in anime. I tend to avoid calling an anime shit on the first episode, mainly because that would be a very biased thing to say of me, considering I haven't seen much of the anime yet. What you need to understand is that I have already seen the anime, and the reason why episode 1 is so infuriating is because it essentially contradicts the entirety of this shit show that happens later on. In the first episode we get introduced to Amano and Deus, but also to Yuno Gasai. My problem with this episode doesn't begin until Deus is introduced. Deus is supposedly Amano's imaginary friend that he created because he wanted somebody to talk to. To think that such a god actually exists in Mirai Nikki's world is asinine. I will get back to this anime's world building as a whole later, because that's shit too. One of the many things you will notice in this episode is the really bad animation, which didn't bother me at this point, but it's important to remember what I'm saying here because the animation in the later episodes gets much worse, with art detail and design looking like it was made with Microsoft fucking Paint. So back to what I was saying, Deus claims to exist in the real world, which automatically shits on this anime's concept as a whole because apparently Deus created the survival game with the help of the 11th diary owner.
No.
Wait, what? That's not how any of this shit works. And how the fuck am I supposed to swallow the fact that Deus even exists, let alone that he can speak with other people? You'll have noticed by now that I haven't mentioned this little shit who's Deus's partner, who also wants to become God, and her fucking motives are never explained. So that says a lot about this anime's consistency in characters. The incompetence of Mirai Nikki is such that it betrays itself in the first 15 minutes, and because it couldn't be bothered to have any consistency at all, it introduces Yuno Gasai, who's in love with Yukito. The reason why Yuno is in the introduction of this review should be quite obvious by now. If it weren't for this little one-dimensional horny psychopath, the entire show would have been over in 5 episodes or less. I will get back to Yuno and Amano as characters later because they're awful. Now, to be fair, there is not a single good character in this anime, and even if Mirai Nikki shows snippets of good here and there with some of its characters, it immediately goes back to its old ways and shits on said characters. Case in point being Minene, number 9 in the survival game, who we will get back to in a bit. To say that this first episode is just bad is a great understatement because it's absolutely nonsensical. Mirai Nikki seriously expects you to just accept all this bullshit it tries to feed you about the game, about Deuce, and about Amano, and the only way anyone would just deal with it would be turning off their brain. Because that's what you should do if you watch episode 1 of this. In fact, that's what you should do if you plan to watch any of Mirai Nikki, if not the entire show. I find the turn off your brain sentence quite insulting, and I consider it a tired argument at this point, an argument which is primarily used by a certain anime or show's fans to cover for all of its flaws. Now let me make something very clear here. You don't see me fucking defending Claymore's bullshit when it does it in the plot, nor do you see me giving it a 10. Despite being aware of just how many problems it has. I've said this before, and I will say it again. A good first episode for an anime is essential because it establishes that the viewer is not gonna waste their fucking time watching your anime, and that there have to be some redeeming qualities to said anime, which you would be able to see in the first episode. Mirai Nikki has none of that. Furthermore, episode 3 is fucking pointless. While I can understand the idea of trying to develop Yuno and Amano, and while the interaction between them is quite decent at points, you're gonna be watching this video, notice it has fan service now, and then realize that it's the only fan service episode so far, with the exception of that one time when Yuno captures Amano. The reason why this makes no sense is because it's simply bad. This is not a good episode because the direction is, as established earlier, piss poor, and you have to look no further than the size of Yuno's tits to see the anime's true intentions. By the way, I feel compelled to remind you that in this episode alone, Yuno's tits are huge. And I'm talking big. Really big. They are normal during the rest of the anime. Why? Who knows? Regardless of all of that, I'll get back to the fanservice as whole at the end of this review because I have something to say. The anime does a very shit job at explaining why this episode even happened, going as far as to justify that they had to go to that location to get ahead of other potential enemies or otherwise diary holders. Never mind the fact that neither of these two questions how loyal number 4 really is. Seriously, let's think about this logically. He has every reason to want to kill them, so why the fuck are they trusting him again? Who knows? There are a few reasons why I continued to watch Mirai Nikki, so let's just get on with this. Now, I never said there was any good in Mirai Nikki, but that is not entirely true. If there is any silver lining to this anime, it would have to be the soundtracks, because they're very good. I'm probably in the minority when I say this, but I loved the music in this anime, and not just the opening, which by the way, it's the best thing to have come out of this rotten piece of shit. Now clearly, this is not the best opening I've ever seen, but it's what really hyped me up at the beginning of each episode, and somehow gave me hope that the anime would redeem itself and become good. The editing in this show doesn't do the opening any justice though, because sometimes the opening starts playing at very random and bad times for no reason at all.
溶けちゃうよ。次はあれ乗ろう、ユッキー。
僕はなんでこんなところにいるんだろう。
I am once again in the minority when I say that the reason why I like these openings is because they don't seem to suffer from the piss poor art and animation in Mirai Nikki as a whole, likely because they had some good budget into them. I wish I had anything else to add to the good in this anime, but I don't, so it's time to get right back into the bad. I mentioned earlier that the animation and art are absolutely garbage, and I stand by that. Sometimes I will make statements claiming that the art in certain anime is horrible beyond belief, and sometimes that's done with comedic intent, so the statement is exaggerated. However, there is no exaggeration when I say that this anime looks like fucking shit. I can forgive the bad art, the shitty line-out work, and maybe even the absurd amount of motion blur that this anime adds to the fight scenes, because it doesn't know how else to fucking simulate movement. I don't know, maybe animating the people fighting? Is that a good idea? But what I can't forgive are the still shots covered in filters to simulate movement, or the shots of characters walking as if they were sliding across the floor. There is seriously something to be said about polish with a lot of these shonens, and I understand that long-running shonens are unable to keep excellent animation across the board for 500 episodes or more, but Mirai Nikki does not have 500 episodes. It has 26 shitty episodes, so it can't hide behind that excuse. Also, it might be a little late for disclaimers at this point, but I won't discuss Redial in this video, because as much as people claim the ending there is better, I disagree. I think it's worse. What's more, because Redial is an OVA, I just can't consider it canon at all. Because I think so differently of Mirai Nikki the anime and its OVA, they shall be treated as two different entities. And in this case, I'll reserve judgment on Redial, otherwise the video would be 4 hours long. To this anime's credit though, the animation in Redial seems to be way better than the anime, so I guess there is that. The combination of the shitty game these people are playing and the subpar animation and art design is the fucking fight scenes, which would have otherwise been fine, and this is yet another insulting part of the anime, because by episode 2 I had already accepted that the anime is absolute garbage, and the only reason why I wanna watch it now are the fights. You combine this kindergarten level of animation with the anime's horseshit direction and editing, and you end up with a bowl of shit for breakfast. The cherry on top of this shit show are the character actions during said fights, and finally the plot armor. Now, again, I am well aware that some characters cannot avoid the plot armor, but Mirai Nikki's incompetence constantly gets cranked up to 10, because the plot armor in Mirai Nikki is much better than anything I've seen in even something like Naruto Shippuden.
虹を遠隔で爆破って。
ユキ、次を見て。
What the fuck happened here? They should have been blown away by that explosion alone. At least from the angle this horseshit camera showed the explosion. Is Yuno even human? Is Yuno made of fucking titanium? If there is anything I can say about Naruto Shippuden plot armor, it's that at least that anime explains why the bullshit happened, making it somehow easier for you to digest. This anime doesn't care at all. They're selling you the dream with these amazing shonen fights that for some reason feature motion blur. It might be again a tired argument at this point, but too many characters in this anime are edgy beyond belief, and it hurts the anime in more ways than one. And to be honest, just having edgy and quote cool characters does not make an anime any better, nor does it make sure that the viewer will love the anime. Yuno is the fucking worst in this department. I've said this in a previous review of mine, but filters, motion blur, and shitty frame rates should not be happening in an anime because it's not a fucking video game. And it gets even worse. At some point, number 4 gets really close to blowing Amano's brains out, but the plot needs him alive, so it has this number 4 start a fucking monologue which allows Amano to escape. What a crock of shit! The direction problems don't stop here, as entire arcs of this anime border on absurdity. As if it weren't bad enough that the exposition, animation, art, and essentially everything else in this anime is inconsistent to the core, they had to keep adding more by completely failing to establish this fucking world. The world building in Mirai Nikki is god awful and lacks any sort of sense and consistency to the characters that fucking live inside of it. To put it into perspective, I've probably seen more people inside Amano's school than I have outside of it. You can already tell by just watching the Minene fight, but this is dog shit. Later in the anime, after your eyes have already oozed enough blood from the paint animation, you might be mistaken into thinking you've gone insane from the show, and probably ignore the fact that during this driving scene, there is nobody on the fucking road. Oh, wait, there is someone. These two fucking idiots who don't matter anyway. The cars in this anime are disgusting, not just because of the design or the way they look, also because they don't seem to follow basic rules of physics when they fucking drive. This is due to the anime's use of CGI, which is horrendous. The CGI in this anime is very bad, likely because all the budget went into the fucking opening. What do you guys think of Deus Ex Machina, who runs at a frame rate of 8? And what about this laggy piece of exposition that the anime gives us? As I've already made clear, the anime feels extremely unfinished. You'd think that an anime with fights that resemble the Dragon Ball fucking Z at the end, the characters would be badass enough to be able to cover for this anime's flaws, so that you can at least have the bragging rights that you have watched a kick-ass experience with pretty visuals. But no, that's not the case, and the characters are not that badass. In fact, I'd venture to question whether they're even badass to begin with. Yuno is a shitty yandere whose every single line of dialogue revolves around Amano. For the last fucking time, yandere is not a character trait. Number 11 is so insignificant that I don't even remember his fucking name, despite him being important to the plot. Minene is another crazed maniac with a passion for weapons, who at times even turns tsundere. Fucking hell. Remember my argument about the inconsistency? Well, this fucking character looks like a blow-up doll, and it's funny as fuck to see that nobody seems to care or even question her existence. None of that is explained, by the way. The two number 7 diary holders are probably the worst part about characterization in this anime, so we will save them for last. Yuno is by far the worst fucking character I ever seen in a shonen. Not because she's a yandere, and we will come back to this in a minute, but mainly because she's Amano's plot armor. And when you realize why she's essential to the plot, you also realize why the anime refuses to kill her. Fully analyzing all of this outrage would add another good half an hour to this video, but let me say this. The show is so stupid, so fucking illogical, that it can't even remain consistent with Yuno's character as a whole. Sometimes she's made of titanium, others she's humanized and even normal, and gets tired too like everyone else because she can run out of stamina. Needless to say that later in the anime you might as well choke on my argument here like you would choke on a horse's cock, because the anime betrays this argument I just made with no regret whatsoever. Yuno becomes omniscient in a world where she shouldn't be. other inconsistencies in this world have to do with the fact that Yuno has a giant fucking hole in her backyard and nobody could have been fucked to do anything about it until it was too late, let alone even notice it was fucking there. It was behind a sealed door, and if my memory serves me right, Yuno's behavior should have been a red flag from the start. But of course, you can't ask Mirai Nikki to be logical, because its characters are just dumb and they don't care. Among the cast of moronic characters, we've got a police officer who is too incompetent to properly interrogate Yuno about the gigantic hole, and the diary holders which are given development and then being killed in the shittiest, least respectful ways you can possibly imagine. Before I jump into the worst characters in this anime and why they are so inconsistent, sometimes even in the context of their own fucking backstories, I had one last thing to say about the world building in this anime. At some point, Amano and his cast of generic shonen friends have to fight some dogs. What? Anyways, they have to fight these fucking dogs which were being remotely controlled by some other person, and the anime seriously tried to develop this entire character, but you couldn't possibly give a fuck because said character was introduced 1 fucking minute ago. In shonen, a character usually needs at least a good episode or 2 of screen time for people to get attached to them, and it makes sense, because this anime doesn't fucking know what character development is. My point being though, has anyone ever questioned what the fuck was even going on with these dogs? No, because nobody knows. And I'll venture to guess the army of directors that worked on Mirai Nikki don't either. Oh, and because I didn't get to say this earlier, whose fucking idea was it to have Minene dress in a fucking fetish maid suit during the school attack? Clearly, someone in the office came up with this brilliant idea, and I'd really like to know who that is. Anyways, later in the anime, when Yuno captures Amano and Akise and the rest of his friends venture to save him, they come across a room, which was a trap. There is no way I can describe how fucking stupid this entire scene is. Okay, so that's a trap, and we know it. We know that. Yeah, that's a good idea. So that's a trap. We expected that. Very interesting. Look at this fucking retard. What the fuck are you doing? And of course the plot doesn't need to explain any of that. Because who the fuck cares, right? These morons get inside the fucking room just after one of them claims it must be a trap. I can understand having one person go inside to check, but the rest of them should have fucking stayed outside to keep the goddamn door open. You will see that it's a trend in this anime, but whenever it needs a certain character to do something, it will flip the idiot switch on them so that the plot can progress. It's ridiculous and often even comical to a degree. Remember when Yukiteru told Yuno to fuck off because of what she did? Well, 1 episode later, they're together again, despite someone showing this dickhead solid proof that Yuno is not only crazy, but she's also a fake. A clone of the original. If you need any more proof that Amano is a fucking idiot and a puppet in this show, well, here you go. I mentioned earlier that both Yuno and Amano are the worst shonen protagonists I've ever seen, and that's because the anime works in ways that neither of them could exist or fully function within this anime without the other. Their backstories are linked by a very uninspired flashback, which was so pointless that they could have gone by with just telling the audience what the fuck was going on with a simple line of monologue, since the anime clearly doesn't understand exposition, and whenever it tries to develop a character, it just makes said character seem dumber than they were initially. Amano, as a character, is a pointless crying sack of shit who can barely produce the emotions necessary to even be a shonen protagonist. This would have been fine if it were done right. Not like being a crying sack of shit can help you develop a character here, because Amano is simply hopeless. Maybe even less than hopeless.
私は本当にユッキーのことが好きなの。それだけは信じて。
He's gonna start crying again, fucking hell. Yuno saves him endless times when he should have died early on. When Amano has to face the two number 7s, they proceed to have an argument about love in the middle of the fight? Because of course they do. What the fuck is going on? What's... This is fighting. Don't start fucking in the middle of a fight. What's the fucking point of this shit? Who gives a shit? Yeah, exactly. So what? Who cares? Nobody gives a fuck, man. Just get on with it. But more importantly, during this fight, Yuno becomes faster than fucking Sasuke in Naruto and saves Amano's dumbass again. The funniest thing is she's much faster than even Sasuke from Naruto. How the fuck can you even see that coming? This is some kind of... Oh my god, this is some yandere bullshit because it makes no sense. Nothing in this anime makes any fucking sense. And to make things worse, Amano starts crying again in the middle of the fucking fight. And to make things so much worse, it is established that Yuno has written all of Amano's speeches so far. This is established earlier on. Because he's too beta and nice to be able to come up with badass lines, yet somehow he's such a good actor to the point when he meets Deuce, he's able to play a role and act like it's nobody's business because, say it with me, fuck consistency! Oh, and I guess we can destroy all the telephone towers and lines because nobody else in this world will ever need them. And they are right. There is nobody else in this fucking city. But still, let's assume that there are other people here. Let's fuck it up for everybody else just because we're trying to run away from two fucking idiots who aren't even bad guys and who most likely wouldn't have been able to kill you. Because when they fucking capture you, they let you live. No, they don't destroy your fucking diary so that you die and lose the game. They talk and they threaten you, yet they do nothing. Wow. That goes to show how smart these fucking assholes are. They are so smart that they couldn't even kill the two idiots when they had them. And guess what? The anime makes it very obvious that these people are smart enough to find Yuno and Amano so quickly, despite the fact that Deuce said that the diaries can only give you hints as to where to find a certain diary owner to fight them. So, what logic does that even make? None. Because that's all this anime is about. Doing nothing and creating pointless tension that the kids will think it's cool and epic, you know, as they say. A tension that shouldn't even be there. When it's all said and done, and the anime finally has to kill these two dumb fucks, it proceeds to develop a backstory for each one of them before they fucking die. The reason why this is so infuriating to me is because the anime does this provocative shot of Ai's chest. Oh my god. They not only use rape for compassion just 4 minutes earlier, but they have the audacity to shove a fan service shot at the worst fucking time possible. It couldn't have waited 5 minutes? No. And the outrage doesn't stop here. Ai manages to talk and stay alive for several minutes after having her throat cut, yet for some other characters, they can die much more easily, like we've seen in the dog episode. Some other diary holders also die in instants, but they absolutely had to drag out the scene having these two morons because they have a backstory, so you should technically care about them, right? Right. Look, as much as I hate everything here with passion, I felt genuine sadness when Ai and Marco died. I don't know if I felt insulted because they took part in such a horrendous anime, if I felt bad because they died in such shitty ways for the plot to progress, or that they absolutely had to die. It's time to pay number 11 a visit and explain why he shouldn't even exist. Beyond the fact that he shouldn't be able to communicate with Deuce, which we've established earlier, his fucking plan to use his diary, which can apparently predict every other diary and therefore counterattack all of them, is outright pathetic, mainly because we already know Amano's diary can protect him from anything because it gives him clear insight on what his near future will be and how to save himself if need be. In reality, because his fucking stupid plan would have led us into a shonen where each character would have to one-up the other with their diary, he had to die so we can halt his progress. And because Yuno is as omniscient as ever, it wasn't enough that the anime shot itself when it took Ai an entire 10 minutes to fucking die after getting slashed in the throat. I finally lost my shit and went insane when Akise got his entire head cut off and he kept walking like shit didn't stop. What really sent me over the edge are the last couple of episodes. Not only does the anime turn into fucking Dragon Ball Z, but these fight scenes are so absurd and nonsensical that the only use they have is to make fucking anime AMVs on YouTube. And if you want to make a Mirai Nikki AMV, then you've hit the jackpot because you can literally use any genre of music to make your edits. You can use fucking rock, metal, trap, EDM, and just generally electronic music. Don't believe me? It really says something when even I can agree with the Mirai Nikki fans on one fact, and that is the ending for this anime is horrible. This is an ending so horrendous and wretched that nothing could have saved it. This is by far the edgiest ending I have seen so far, and while the redial ending solves some of these issues, it's not worth sitting through the anime to watch it. I need to make a point and talk about the fan service in this anime. I've said it before and I will repeat myself now. Generally speaking, studios use fan service in their shows if they're not confident enough that their content will sell, which indirectly means that if you use a lot of fan service in your anime, you know it's jack shit. Some anime tend to hide behind self-awareness, meaning that they know they abuse fan service, yet they couldn't possibly give a fuck. And let me say this, self-awareness doesn't mean jack shit if your anime is jack shit. I've said that the music in this anime is excellent and I still stand by that, even at the end of this review. However, watching these episodes caused me so much fucking mental pain and anguish that it's not worth it to just sit through the anime entirely for the music alone. And besides, it's not like you can't find any of these songs on YouTube in a 5-minute search query. And let me say this before we move on. Some anime are fully aware how shit fanservice is, yet they do it with such finesse and ingenuity that it helps make said anime so much better. And with that, I am done. I said everything I have to or care to say about this anime. Mirai Nikki is a horrible anime. It's not a shonen, considering its canon ending it has. It's just a shitty romance between Yukito and Yuno, disguised as a shonen. Mirai Nikki was the biggest waste of my time, and I have watched it 4 times now, so I can confidently say that I know what I'm saying when I make the statement that Mirai Nikki is a scam. An army of developers worked on this piece of shit. An army! An entire fucking army! And none of that matters now, because the anime has an 8 out of 10 on MAL, meaning that if they wanted to make a season 2, they could, because the anime has had massive support from the fan base. It took me an entire year to get this off my chest, but I am finally able to turn the page on Mirai Nikki. Honestly, what a fucking relief it is. I want to forget about this piece of shit as soon as humanly possible. You all know where this is going, right? Fuck Mirai Nikki! Fuck it with its insulting rape for compassion scenes, its shit characters and plot. Rest in piss! Shit out of 10! Yeah, whatever. Look, I didn't add this as a disclaimer at the beginning of the review because I already had a pretty long intro for the review, so I thought it would be a little too much. But if you watched and love Mirai Nikki, we still don't have a problem. I try to raise awareness with my reviews, and of course I try to be funny, even if my humor sometimes is very bad, and I acknowledge that, I'm aware of it. But that never means that I would go out of my way to hate or bash on the fans of a certain anime. I understand the appeal behind some of these shows, and I understand that a lot of people would disagree with my opinion here, and that's all well and good. However, I absolutely hate this hypocrisy I sometimes see in the comments of other reviewers, or even my own comments, where people claim a certain anime is bad, so you got it right, but will go out of their way to dislike a video and leave comments insulting the reviewer just because he happened to shit on their favorite anime. It's this complete dismissal of any fault, despite clearly being in the wrong by the fan base, that really held me back when it comes to this review, because I wanted to be 100% sure that I could review this anime in such an unbiased way as to show all of its flaws without necessarily adding my opinion into the mix. And I guess what's done is done. I stand by what I said in this review. I would probably be fucking 80 years old and still complain about Mirai Nikki. God! But I want to make another last point and say that the most important thing when looking for an anime to watch is to find something you enjoyed. In my case, I happen to not enjoy myself while watching this anime, and that's fine. I guess I really wanted to make another last statement, but I will save this for my next review because, yeah, if anyone has bad things to say about Claymore, I'm not gonna up and dismiss their claims without making sure they're false first. I'm gonna try and have a debate with said person so that maybe we can come to terms as to why Claymore would be considered shit in some aspects. Because, as a critic, I am aware that perfection does not exist. I gave Prison School a fucking 9 out of 10, and the review for that is gonna come sometime soon, maybe. I'm thinking either August or September. Regardless, what I want to make clear is that I gave that anime a 9, but it's the best rating I've ever given an anime, even better than Sakamoto the anime. So, yeah. And to be fair, as flawed as Mirai Nikki is, it is far from the worst of the anime I have seen, and judging from the top anime on Mal, I have much bigger fish to fry. Thanks for watching, guys, have a good day, take care, and goodbye. God fucking damn it. Oh my god. What the fuck is fuck, I hate my allergies, man. Because as much as people claim that the anime and its OVA... Wow, I messed up my fucking sentence there.